Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. On this second episode of AI, I noticed something very interesting about the correlation between right now and what's actually taking place in AI. So let me give you some OG sort of comparisons as to what I think is going on right now. I don't think this will be a tremendous mystery for any of you, but I need you to kind of feel it if you're not feeling it. Especially if you're older like me and you're looking at this opportunity going, is this one of those things? It's like, yeah, it's one of those things. It may or may not be beyond your capabilities. Yours truly was in the San Francisco, not really San Francisco, but the Silicon Valley area when the internet exploded. It had been around for a little while, but we didn't have, it took about 3 years for it to get to a visual protocol where we could actually touch it and start programming it and buying services where we put our web pages and that kind of stuff. Trivial today, nearly impossible back in the old days. I mean, my God, I paid $45 a month for an email from Netcom. So the reason why I'm mentioning is this. I was a top database engineer, mid-90s, kicking butt, lead guy. And then all of a sudden this internet thing comes in and my boss pulls me into his room and says, hey, you're going to program the internet expansion pack for our database package. And I barely can understand what he's talking about. I know what the internet is. I've seen it, but you don't go home and play on it. There's no computers that just dial right into it like the iMac a few years later. So I said, I don't know how to do that. And he goes, that's okay. He took an 8x10 piece of paper and started drawing out a bunch of little hints. This was in March of 1996. By June, I'm in Dallas giving a presentation, email package, FTP app, web client, web server. Not telling you this to impress you at all. But the transformation of my career went from top Fortune 1000 database engineer to this early adopter, first time, I was one of the first dudes in there doing the internet. This is where we are today. I wake up in the morning and this is just organically grown. And this is the comparison I'm about to make. Sorry, my computer is doing weird stuff. And I've been just kind of looking at YouTube pages because I subscribe to a few, YouTube channels that are kind of telling you the latest and greatest. And most of those suck. So I found a couple folks I really like. Okay. It's starting to get intense in terms of the evolution on a monthly basis, going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, how do you write this piece of code is now sort of defunct. You go over to this product called Cursor. You download this integrated development environment, IDE. You load your project in it and you start asking the questions, or you tell it, hey, make a brand new program from scratch, and you give it a nice spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, but a nice bullet list of everything you want. If you miss it, it's not going to be there. And it starts writing the code for you in whatever technology you want. If you want it in an iPhone, it writes it in an iPhone, Android, normal web, whatevs, right? Insane. So what I've done is I've went out again and I studied kind of some of the top topics that we can talk about, and then we're going to break it down so that you have some perspective. If you're not in computers whatsoever, this is going to be almost like time traveling into the future. If you were to close your eyes or go up to, proverbially go up to some cabin in the woods for the next 2 to 3 years and have enough money never to come back down to society, have enough food and water and everything you need up there, and then you come back down and join the rest of society, it is going to feel like you were, what's the name of that guy who slept for 20 years, right? That you had slept up there for a very long time. So I want to start off with one that's very popular right now. Mic's a little hot, sorry about that. Which is the DeepSeek thing that came out of China. Now, probably a lot of you are like, yeah, I heard that word. What the hell does that mean? So let's just recap for a second. I'm going to give you some foundation of how these AIs come about, especially like a ChatGPT or really any AI you're talking to. You have to build an AI based on your goals of your AI. So do you want it to know how to code? Do you want it to know history? Do you want it to do science of any particular category? You have to know these things before you educate your AI. Do you want it to be something that humans can talk to? Okay, well, you need a language model in front of it so that humans can talk to it and then get to that back goal. Okay? What you may not know is the almost inconceivable amount of money that's spent educating these AIs. It's not uncommon for some of the things like ChatGPT or Gemini or Meta's thing. There's a ton, right? There's a ton. We're going to get into a few of them here. For them to spend $1 billion to $4 billion or to $5 billion just educating these AIs, meaning either buying content or paying for them per minute, per hour GPU processors to parse a paragraph of text, chop it into a bunch of logical pieces based on the algorithm of the language model, and get it to the database in a way that that particular AI can understand it in a future conversation. I know it sounds like spaghetti. The big thing about DeepSeek was that they claimed that they only spent about $5 million to get a pretty decent AI going. Now, when a lot of folks look at the ability of DeepSeek, they automatically think it smells extremely fishy, and they think that what's going on here is that you have essentially a company making a claim. It's behind the CCP curtain, so you'll never, ever be able to confirm it, which is a lot of things that China does, right? That they actually did a calculation for like a minimum amount of investment, even saving money, using a cheaper GPU to get it done. And they estimate about $1.62 billion, which is still pretty impressive. But then again, DeepSeek is not exactly the most brilliant one. However, one of the most interesting things that's going to take place with these AIs competing with each other, because we're almost getting there. We're almost getting there where the technology itself is going to compete not in feature set, but it's going to compete in the data that it actually spews out. And so they know that if, for instance, China were to grind out all the physics of the moon missions, the old Viking Mars missions, even 9/11, a bunch of stuff, it's going to scientifically say that these things are absolutely impossible, and therefore maybe start deducing some other cause and effects and parties that are involved. Well, obviously, the ones in America are filtering that information and keeping you out of it. If you're a decent scientist, you can go behind the door of any one of the things it's trying to deceive you with and simply bring it a particular scientific question. And a lot of times you can get ChatGPT or any of these other ones to agree, oh yeah, well that's impossible. And you're like, oh, okay, we can't go to the moon then. Oh no, but we did go to the moon, and we went to the moon because Jay said we went to the moon, whoever, right? So one of the big topics is, China getting involved with this entire artificial intelligence thing. They have more to hide than the United States of America, if that's possible, okay? They have to control everything so that people don't start thinking outside the CCP box or start identifying corruption, But the way this is being fought, and it's hopefully something that will change in the next 4 years for our country here in America, is that we actually have China coming over, and as you very well know, they're buying up land, they're buying up giant farming land, but they won't allow you to do that over there, right? If you're an American and you marry someone who's Chinese, you can own 49%, but you can't own 51%. You have to be born over there. If we did that over here, we'd be called massive racists, right? So the other thing that's occurring over here is they're trying to buy up land to put big data centers on them, to grind these AIs, to grind them at a more of a cost effective manner. I'll give you some examples. One of the areas that's very similar to AI is the computer graphics farms that we use to generate movies. So when you have a computer generated image inside your movie, these things are sent off to render farms so that the artist gets it back really quickly. And so the big expense is this. You're running one of the hottest processors, meaning physically hot, called a graphics processing unit, a GPU. It's meant for graphics, but it also does a really great job with AI. And now NVIDIA and a few of these other companies are starting to see, okay, we'll change the chip just a little bit to make sure it's ready to process specifically a calculation that's related to AI. The CG farms have done amazing things over the last 30 years, mainly over the last 20. They have said, okay, we want to run a big warehouse full of these computers. We want to have an internet connection, a little add-on that you put inside your program. So you go, I want to see what this looks like, photoreal. Boom. It sends your file, which is really thin, over to the server. It grinds up all these frames, and then the plugin typically will drop all the frames or the finished movie into a directory on your side. But you get it much, much faster than if you did it with your CPU and took days, right? When I had to generate the intro, the first intro to this show, 3 years ago, it took my computer at home, potentially 4 or 5 hours to do one frame when the pod starts turning around, because I put fog in the room so that there was volumetric light when the headlights popped. When I finally got a 4090 on my PC, that was a matter of minutes. No problem. 4K. No problem at all, right? By the way, that computer's being sent back to the manufacturer for repair. But one of the things that they did back in the day, just so that you know, is you hear about these countries and these companies fighting over developing these servers, is that, for instance, in Europe, a couple of these CG farms put their companies right next to hydroelectric power plants, which still aren't made to the Caltech spec developed in the 50s, but the power is 1/10 the cost. So now the only thing they're really paying for, they're paying 1/10 for the electricity, and they're only paying for the actual death of the GPU, because they'll run these things rampant. They'll run CPUs a lot too for some of that stuff. So anyway, the number one thing is that we're being sort of pushed into a narrative where America and China are banging heads, and it's like, Europe, what are you doing, right? Every country has something going on. Great Britain has something going on. A lot of it's surveillance. It'll be pitched as sort of customer service, but we'll get into that shortly here. The second one I've got is a very interesting one that just fell off the market, and it was called Humane AI Pin. It was a company in the Bay Area, San Francisco area. They just got bought out by HP for $116 million. I hadn't heard of this company. So I get this article referral, and I'm like, what is that? So I went and looked it up, watched a movie on YouTube. Now, we all know surveillance. We don't want to be surveyed. This was one of the more, I would think, acceptable sort of formats. It's a little tiny little box you wear on your chest. It's like a little flat box. It has a little curve at the top. It has a camera in it and a speaker in it. And it's got a touch-sensitive fingerprint, so it actually registers your fingerprint, so no one can use it if it's not you. And you interact with this thing, and it was absolutely brilliant. And again, HP says they're going to do something with it. I think it will probably be it'll be a very useful form factor for the future. I think a lot of this is going to take place, and it'll be integrated into our clothing. When I helped develop the film back in, was it 07 to 10, and then it got turned into Johnny Depp's Transcendence film as someone else stole it, we had sections in the book where it was projecting onto you, onto your clothing, and you had all kinds of wild stuff. Well, this thing, once you turn it on, you can put your hand out, and it knows where your palm is and projects directly into your palm. And then you would do touching your fingers to make certain things happen in the program, including rotating your hand a little bit, would go from, say, advance to the next track to back up to the next track. And it's highlighting the buttons as you're rotating your hand, but it doesn't activate it until you pinch your finger. Super cool. And of course, it has all the stuff where it goes on, get your music, it can search the internet. That's all nosebleed technology, right? But the form factor was cool, and that they had this light on top. And the light on top was what they called like a full disclosure transparency. If it's doing anything, if the circuit goes live, it is lighting up so that you know. You have to put it into a dictation mode. Anyway, I think this technology will most likely resurface again. It took pictures while you're walking. You can just push it to take pictures. You can push it to take a movie. But it did seem more humane as a form factor, and it's almost like you have to buy that off the market to make sure it doesn't compete with all the stuff that's very intrusive, like the Ray-Ban glasses coming out of Meta, which does not have the right to capture anyone's likeness outside of publicly stated places. Like we have to get permits when we film someone in a movie. You can't just, it doesn't matter where anyone is, you can't just put them on your YouTube channel. And so if someone's running around with Ray-Ban glasses and then just posting it, they're looking for potentially lawsuits if someone very rich is with their mistress. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so the next one I'm going to talk about is called Mattergen. And that's the word matter, M-A-T-T-E-R-G-E-N. And this is pretty fascinating. It's being funded by Microsoft, boo. But, that's going to take place because this stuff, unfortunately, takes tremendous amounts of money. And, of course, the way they've configured the entire world is the rich get richer and we stay the same, right? But once you look into this, it's fascinating. Again, when I worked with the folks at Stanford for Folding at Home, where they were writing algorithms to figure out how protein patterns in the human body were folding so they could create protein inhibitors and basically arrest any type of mad cow disease or anything going crazy inside the body. They were using everyone's computers at home, like SETI at home, to make that happen. And it was one of the most labor-intensive algorithms out there. SETI was, I think, able to return packets a little bit faster than Folding at Home. But what this is doing is this is saying, okay, we have all these materials in the world that we basically create, and we want to make sure that we can create them as quickly as possible for the least amount of money as possible, right? So what they've done is they've educated an AI with every single step of chemistry that is used currently to make every single alloy, every single element that we find, and move it together and make it anything else other than its base element, right? All the properties, the control, chemistry have been put in this thing. And then what they've done is they've asked this AI, look, we like this metal right here. Can you make it faster and cheaper? Can you make it in a way that it takes less energy to get it to create itself? If they can, then they sell that patent off to somebody and you can make potentially lithium batteries faster, right? However you configure that, right? Now, right now, it's all a computational success. So they actually have a few what we call indications in science that it's actually got some cheaper ways to make some of the stuff that's in there, okay? The partnership they're doing now is with someone who can actually test that out and see if these formulas actually yield what's been theoretically prophesized inside the AI. This is actually, for me, a fairly decent approach with AI. It's not, maybe we'll get that transparent aluminum that was in the Star Trek movie, right? But imagine it comes up with things that are stronger, better, faster, because it simply knows the science of what's going on, instead of human beings creating random stuff, like thousands, tens of thousands of random combinations and trying to find what happened. The computer could do it all by itself. I know you feel me. One of the things that's going to be a generic thing you're going to hear, and it's sometimes it's very laughable. I haven't seen one that's really intelligent just yet, which is that all the companies in the world are going to claim, and this is on TV constantly, that they've got artificial intelligence that's going to help you do something. The idiotic implementation of this sort of thing is to say, oh, we realize that you buy razor blades from Dollar Shave Club once every 2 weeks. So if we recommend it through an email that, hey, I think it's about time, don't you buy blades about this time? Don't you buy like 1 pack of 6 and then you get the shaving cream every 4 weeks, blah, blah, blah. Technically speaking, that's AI, but that's not the AI that hasn't been around since forever. Right. That stuff is just basic old calculations. Probably started becoming automated, that kind of thing in the 80s, to be honest with you, that we could sense that kind of thing, sense that kind of data. No big deal. The super intelligent stuff that's starting to occur will be when you say, I like all these tracks in Amazon Music. And it does create like a discovery list, which it algorithmically finds out who else liked what. If they like that, they also like this, and they keep compounding the statistical probability that you want music. But wait for it, in about 1 year or 2 years, it's going to say, I wrote 10 songs that I think you might like. And it'll be completely synthesized in the computer. Expect that to happen shortly. And I want to tell a little anecdote, a little story. For you people who are OG listeners, I had a bizarre acquaintance with Steve Jobs. I ended up working with him. I only met him physically one time, but chatted with him through chat. I brought EA and Apple together because of my relationship with him, and he helped me till his last dying month, I swear to God. When he died, I had this wild relationship with him, right? And I could just talk to him and get back information. He'd send me off to somebody, some top brass person at Apple. And so when Tim Cook came in, I'd never heard of this guy. But I thought, well, probably not. We're probably seeing a transition of power. We're seeing the original head from the snake get chopped off because he was going to sue Google. And now we've got a guy who's probably going to be real easy to control, and he's going to make this a whole agenda thing about something other than computers. And poof, it was there, right? But I wrote this letter to Tim just to see if he would even respond. It was a physical letter. I had it physically delivered to the office. Dude never replied, never had anyone reply. And here I am telling him the history of Steve and myself. Like, hey, man, this was like, and all the other heads of state, it's like, the reason why I'm telling you the story was that I told him back in the day, I guess this is 2009, probably, I tried to find the letter so I could read it to you guys. I can't find it. But I suggested that he use all of this data, all this metadata, all this interactive data that's on the iPhone, that's inside the computers, to start suggesting, an intelligent interaction between Apple devices and the user, so it would actually be special. So it'd be like, why would I use Android? Because it doesn't have this. And to this day, they really haven't done it. They've just kept the same old game going, which is more notifications. I mean, that's not it. Siri's kind of implemented, but not implemented. There's a black mirror with there's an egg in it. I'll just put it that way, where this person lives in a beautiful penthouse, whatever, condo of the future, and the AI is basically just predicting everything that they need. Their toothbrush is ready to rock and roll. The toast is ready. All this other stuff is all ready, right? And we have the power to do that today with very little interaction. The Hotel of Tomorrow, the hot integration of technology into hotels never quite happened. And it could be integrated in a way that it wouldn't feel like it's surveillance necessarily. It's really just that mechanical stuff like the Dollar Shave Club recommending blades to you, right? Anyhow, so you're going to see a lot of promises again that this is coming. It'll probably arrive in a Helix robot faster than it will actually anything in your house, which we'll talk about at the end of this whole thing. Now, there's a lot of folks trying to get a freebie upgrade paycheck by saying the AI is involved suddenly in their systems. I will just simply say there's an agency that we don't like in the world that starts with a particular letter. And then there's a routing company that's really famous out of the Bay Area that starts with the same letter because they're really the same company. Okay. And they are, with a lot of other folks, anyone who's routing data around your company, outside your company, the cybersecurity stuff, they're trying to say that all of a sudden these AIs are walking around the code and doing something that they already haven't been doing. And it's all BS. Everything that could possibly be done by these security companies has been going for 15 years. What is it? The gentleman on the Shark Tank, the Robert guy. He runs a cybersecurity company. If you just listen to his dialogue over the last, 10, 15 years, however long that show's been on, he talks about it all the time. People come in and they say they've got some AI, and he'll shut them down and go, look, we've been doing that forever. So suddenly what they're doing is they're pushing this word to the forefront to try and create BS marketing. Just be aware it's mostly BS marketing. If you see a feature that you have never seen before in your life, and it was a result of a computer thinking, and doing something intelligent, you upload your photo album and it just lays it out for you in a way that you never thought of. And you're like, I want to focus on the kids, focus on this. And it figures it all out, clean up this and that for me everywhere in the entire photo album. That's AI. But simply to say that the premise of the movie Tron from 1982 was that Tron was a program that was watching for things happening on the Incom network that weren't supposed to be happening and shut it down. It was actually just named after the word electronic, but they created a command eventually called trace on, and it was basically tracing everything that was going on in the real programming world. That's been around for a long time. So just be aware that you're going to see a lot of snake oil for stuff that's been around for a very, very long time. So this next one is about a dude who committed music fraud, music royalty fraud. I always wonder if these are organic or if these are set up by record companies to knock this, to get it into the press and make sure it doesn't happen. But this dude was pretty ingenious. I saw the article fly by my computer about 6 months ago. This guy was getting paid by the royalties of streaming downloads. And so he wrote an AI to basically pound his track, which again is not really where we are with AI today. It was a bot, right? It would be like a mechanical man from a 1950s Twilight Zone versus your own child, right? There's a huge difference between those two. Yeah, the other dude can probably pound a rock with his hand and turn it to dust, and your kid can't do that, but your kid can go draw your face and grow up. You know, it's just a weird thing. But this guy successfully made millions of dollars, which that's why it seems like a setup to me. The reason why is this. If you ever seen the movie Office Space, or if you ever seen the Superman with Richard Pryor, it's all about siphoning that little extra penny off of normal deposits that are happening all day into a separate account, and then you steal the money out of the account. But you only do it so little that nobody notices. And this guy runs off and pounds it for, millions and millions of dollars, thinking he wouldn't get caught. And of course, we got FBI and all kinds of big agencies helping out the music industry to just get paid off, right? And it is fraud. So he gets caught. Absolutely insane. But now that's something that everyone's watching. It was already bad enough that streaming has the worst revenue models on planet Earth, right? It's not a way to make money. Your only way to make money is to sell the DVD, or CD, however you want to roll it, and no one's got the device anymore, so it's like you're supporting a band. I went and saw a really fun band called Fat Cats. Blake Lewis from American Idol was in it, which he's just so amazingly talented, it's crazy. And they were selling the CD, and I'm like, man, I don't have any place to play this, man. I got rid of my 1993 Eclipse, So meta. I was actually surprised to hear this on one level that they got caught, right? But Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, he apparently greenlit rating all of your material on your Facebook pages to educate their AI. And of course, they didn't have the rights to do so. And so folks, I don't know how anyone finds out this stuff. What do you use the AI? And you're like, oh, that's my grandmother, 52 times in a Kamala Harris appearance, right? Anyway, people find out about this, and then they start complaining. And so he's in the middle of a lawsuit for this, and I'm sure they'll just make pennies on the dollar for the whole thing. It was my impression from the very, very beginning that when you sign up to this thing, it was the big deal that happened, 5-10 years ago, where it was like, okay, everybody, your content is now his property. So if you post it on his servers, it's his property. He can do with it whatever he wants, including selling it to Cambridge Analytics and pretend like he didn't later on, right? It's funny because people ask me all the time, like, why don't you post your pictures without your sunglasses on? I'm like, because that's for my family and friends, right? Not that you're not my family and friends, but it's like the AIs are going to have to guess where my everything is. And they'll get it right, but there's very few non-sunglass pictures of me out there. Just a little obstacle for them, So Microsoft has an AI that's open source. A lot of them do, because they realize that most of this has been in the open source world. And for those of you who aren't computer geeks, what this means is the actual source code for the program is put into the public domain so that people can see it. They can also make improvements to it, which also have to be through an MIT license. They have to put it back out into the public domain. If they wanted to license it for anything, they have to get permission from the creators, etc., etc. Okay. So Microsoft has one called the PH4 language model, and this is one that you can run on your local computer and start educating it. And of course, you're going to have to, it has already been educated quite a bit. And they talk about how many trillion, words and phrases and symbols have been sort of algorithmically figured out based on how much it's been taught. I'm going to follow up with some terminology after I get through some of these major topics, which will kind of feed in the data that we're talking about here that's more interesting, potentially if you're a geek. Anyway, they've put theirs out. It's pretty darn quick. And what they're basically strategically saying is, look, this isn't going to know everything in the entire world. But hey, if you are a Ford Motor Company and you want to make an AI online that teaches people how to fix their cars or where to go to get them fixed or all that kind of stuff, use this little guy and educate it with all of your user manuals, all the interactions with customers, et cetera, and then offer that online with this language and LLM to actually talk to the user, which we're going to get to in a little bit later here. Now, I want to say a little bit about NVIDIA because I've recommended actually any of you who are tech geeks to go back and watch Computer Chronicles on YouTube from the inception year, which I believe is 1983, filmed in San Mateo, California. Watch it all the way up to about 1989, but pay attention to some of the ones that are regarding the design of a CPU and the design of a motherboard. They will explain it beautifully to you, but I'm going to try to explain this to you as quickly as I possibly can. When it reached the year 1978, you could actually conceive, a human mind could conceive, and they could print out and draw on a piece of paper a chip. Basically, all the transistors, everything that's in there. By 1980, this got so exponentially more microscopic that the mind could not conceive of a chip. And so they had to use software to start, zooming into a chip, which, I mean, we're talking about 1980. Graphics were just brand new, right? So then they move into the 80s, and you have, I believe, an episode in 1983 where the government comes in and shows you a flight sim to train like helicopter pilots. And it's not like our, super realistic stuff that we have today. But if you go back to what you had in your living room in 1983, which might be 5K of RAM, maybe 32K a couple of years later, 64K, maybe by 85, you bought a super souped up computer. None of that could touch a single frame of what was going on inside these flight sims that they're showing you on this show. And so they bring in some of the chip designers. They even flew to Japan to talk to some of the chip designers in Japan to try and parse what the hell was going on. What was taking so long to make these computers faster? And a huge part of this was to say, when we create an algorithm inside a computer, it's a lot different than writing it on a piece of paper. You're holding most of it in your brain. Everything has to be inside the chip. And so what they ended up doing was making the chip one way, and it wasn't compatible with the way that the algorithm was going to need to go into the chip. So they'd have to break the algorithm down and rearrange it, then do the math, then rearrange the solution and get it back out. It was horrific. So they eventually started coming up with some standards. What are the most common mathematical algorithms that are going to happen? Integer math, floating point math, et cetera, and then build a chip that works for it. The graphical processing unit is a chip that is geared for polygon transitional algorithms. And I won't go too much further than that, but it's XYZ algorithms put inside these formulas that can rotate them in 3D. It just so happens that's pretty compatible with some of the base math. It's so fundamental that the AI algorithms can go in there and take advantage of those chips. Okay, I know it's a lot to digest. NVIDIA, I will say, when I had my startup for 3D LED movie theaters, okay, that have not been made yet, high definition, okay, we had, everybody knew somebody, right? Everyone knows like these gods of the industry. And one of my personal partners who passed away in the end of 2020 had nothing to do with the coof. He just had an issue. He brought in one of the founders of NVIDIA. And that's all I'm going to say. But after listening to all the backdoor conversations, backroom conversations about this stuff, it seemed fairly apparent that some of the most genius minds of the military who had given the military some of these amazing chips had been given permission to bring it down into the private sector. Because when you do that, you allow the private sector to pay for all the innovation on the chip, and then it might kick off a whole other way of thinking, which the military could take to the next level, or they run off with quantum chips and it's not even an issue for them anymore. So we get the kind of the breadcrumbs, right? So NVIDIA is continually pushing the envelope. You might hear people naysay it. The only way that NVIDIA would most likely die is if, one, the innovation from within just ends. Someone cuts them off and there's no geniuses inside to make things happen. That's one way. The second way would be death by 1,000 needles. To say, yes, you have the most powerful chips, but they're too damn expensive. And with these 100 Chinese chips, I can get to that speed and surpass it by a little bit for a fraction of the cost. That'll be the only kind of thing that nails them. Again, Intel never thought they would ever be second best to anyone. AMD has taken a huge bite out of them. Intel is still, I think, a much superior chip. But, Motorola used to make all the chips for the Macs, and they died a horrible death. And they try to survive through mobile, right? So OpenAI has issued $1 million to some kids at Duke University to see if they can come up with some guidelines about making the AI have some morals. What's interesting about that is, I don't know where you would have to have some immoral potential for there need to be a moral base, right? This is what we would push over into the robotics conversation, which we'll get to in a little bit here. So not all the AI development is meant for you. A lot of it, at least directly, it's meant for robots so that they can actually push out better products, right? Again, we are sort of in the middle of what you could say would be the microcomputer revolution of the 80s, the internet revolution of the 90s, maybe even like the social media. I don't really think we're at the social media level with AI, but go back to the railroad days of the 1800s. People patented things all the time, a better steam engine, a better turbine for other purposes, right? When you created a better methodology, they'd patent it. And so, of course, Europe had their own technology. England had different technology than Europe. We had different technology than them. And it was just kind of a free-for-all, and that's what's beginning right now. So one of the other big areas that they're trying to push AI into, this is like, if there's a conceivable area where a computer can help, that's where AI is being pushed. So there's no limitation based on what I'm saying. But civil engineering and essentially geospatial awareness of anything on planet Earth, from the interior of a car to the way that your bathtub works, to a whole town, to a whole city, they are going to be using AIs to figure out, based on parameters of tolerability and tolerance from a human being, they're going to be able to design a room that says, this won't be too claustrophobic, but it's going to allow us to put, 1 million people in one building, right? Now, there's going to be if things don't change, Europe and England are going right back into the monarch totalitarianism. They are. It's just, I'm sorry. They're running around arresting people for things that they've said. And, again, we have laws when someone threatens someone's existence or safe being, or well-being, I should say. Yeah, you broke a law, man. It's called assault, right? Assault is not touching someone else's body. You get this wrong all the time in television shows. Battery is when you touch somebody. Assault is when you threaten somebody. So assault and battery is why they put them together. But if someone punches you, they didn't assault you, they batteried you. And so you're talking to a police officer. They know you're ignorant if you start using the word the wrong way. But if you could certainly speed matters up, if you're like, this bruise on the side of my face is not assault, okay? But they are trying to say from all these different countries that they're going to be trying to increase the well-being and, the services, human services of human beings by using AI. And I think it was, by 2003, London had 6 million cameras all over the city. Now they're going to start charging a tourist tax. So if you go to London and most of the major cities over there, and you're not from there, they're going to do a tourism taxation on you. It's like, wow, you don't want anyone to come over there, right? But they're already backdooring all of your stuff. Tim Cook just gave in order to sell iPhones over there. He didn't realize that if he just said, oh, you want us to backdoor our customer data for you, then we'll just pull the iPhone from your country. Just wait to see what the people would do. But no, of course, he's a bend over forward kind of guy and just gave it up. And so now the British government can go into your past and grab all of your communications, which technically speaking, illegally exposes people from different countries. We all know about the Five Eyes, but technically speaking, they shouldn't be able to touch a Canadian's information because they're a Canadian citizen, right? So on and so forth around the world. So there's another company out there called Anthropic. Anthropic has been invested in by Amazon. And they have put $8 billion into it total. They just put another $4 billion into it. But now remember what I talked to you guys about when you want to educate an AI, how much money it takes to grind data, right? It's billions and billions of dollars, potentially easily $5-10 billion to educate an AI. So putting this stuff in there, using the AWS servers, which if those of you aren't geeks, those are the servers that you buy when you use an Amazon cloud server. Obviously, one's kind of shaking the other one's hands, but if you're a CFO for a major company, you have what's called silos, right? And so the company A has got to live in its own silo. If it can't pay its bills, it has to go away. And silo B would be potentially Amazon affording them a credit. So there has to be a credit issued at B, given to A. A can spend it, and when the credit's gone, and I'm sure that since they're friends, it's going to be a low-end discount. But Anthropic is also using Google backend, and this is going to be some, again, proprietary AI that will eventually, I guess, help the Amazon customers. People find toothpaste and, I don't know, tape measure or something really strange. I think Amazon's store is probably one of the best built, run stores in world history so far. And he was the first, right? He was the 1993 guy. He patented, and people don't talk about this, he patented one-click purchase through a web store. If you're doing it, you're actually infringing on his patent. I don't know if he wants money for his patent, but that's definitely something he patented really early in the game. All right, so let's go through a little bit of terminology because you're going to get a few of these passed around, and you should know. You all know the phrase AI. Some of you may not know there's a phrase called AGI, and this is a artificial general intelligence. And what that is a full platform of a particular goal, right? So we have these different components that we're going to get into that make this happen. Again, the LLM is the layer that talks to the human being. Beyond that, what is it doing with the algorithm once it gets your information? ChatGPT is open for all things, right? Anything it's been educated on, it's here to teach you. But it also offers DALL-E, right? DALL-E's whole thing is to generate an image based on going through the ChatGPT brain. It's trying to parse what you're saying, and it gives it off to DALL-E, and it does kind of a cartoony job, right? Then when you get into things like Midjourney, you get much more photoreal images, and you're the one directly talking to the LLM to give it straight to the system, and it's not two different services talking to each other, right? The technical sort of caveat to saying AGI, but you'll hear it all the time. When you watch these YouTube videos, you're going to hear AGI, AGI. The scientists say that that's still a theoretical goal, that no one has quite hit an AGI level, just so that you know. Now let's go to this phrase I keep saying, LLM. It stands for Large Language Model. And what that means is what it sounds like. They will take text that's been written in the world, and they'll do first a probability. Basically, this word has been caught prior to this word 1 billion times in the world. So there's a real tight coupling of these two. And so they'll do just a statistical probability of word after word analysis based on a particular language. Then they start getting into the word's meanings. Is it a verb? Is it a noun? Is it an adjective? Would it be the subject in the sentence? When that happens, then they start to determine meaning. And then they get up to, once they start building models inside of some sort of reality, they can get to probability and that kind of stuff. But this is really where the LLM needs to hand it off to another layer that will say, I think that car traveling that speed with the black ice right there and this thing here probably have a high chance, 65% chance of colliding, depending on the aptitude of the driver, that kind of stuff, right? Some of the LLMs you're familiar with are ChatGPT, Anthropic's personality is called Claude. Isn't that wonderful? And then Gemini for Google. X has its own. I will simply say that when you go to ChatGPT, especially as it's embedded in this product called Cursor, which, I mean, man, if you're coding, you just got to get into it. Cursor allows ChatGPT to see all of your code if you allow it to, and that means it makes much better fixes instead of guessing what's in all of your code, or you having to paste it all in or something like that. Gemini is a joke. It's like, here's a bunch of manuals, go look it up yourself and read non-interpreted stuff, which the biggest problem in programming is that no one writes any documentation anymore. Now let's talk about things moving into more of a robotic realm, because this era of human beings talking to AI to get jobs done is going to last probably a lot shorter than you think. There's certain friends of mine that have just sort of this intuition. They're not even that technical, but I've been showing some of this stuff to some of my friends, and they've instantaneously said, wow, look at the erasing of mankind. Gosh, the rough part about that is to say, what creates change in the universe, right? And it's usually some concept of force and change, right? There has to be some movement. If the universe was static, nothing would exist, right? We'd all just be like, we'd be nothing, right? Human desire is going to be the purpose of a robot. Human desire is going to be the purpose of a piece of software getting written for you, right? Or some other invention that you want. Again, like aluminum glass. It'd be nice if your car had aluminum glass, and that way if someone, accidentally runs into you, it's not going to kill you because you're protected, right? The robots out there, some of them, the Helix is probably the most impressive one. The X1 is another one that's pretty impressive. Boston Dynamics, I guarantee you that's all warfare stuff. That's real rugged, crazy, climb up a wall in 2 seconds and slice your throat or whatever. I mean, that's what that whole thing is all about. That they've never pitched anything other than rugged military stuff. And, where's the money going to be mostly spent? Probably in military. Like every single order of a Helix robot, which I believe is supposed to be about 25 grand. That's going to be everyone's price point, 25 grand. Just like, who's going to buy this stuff, right? The whole car. But the Tesla robot and all this kind of other kind of stuff. You're seeing a lot of heavily edited videos online. I just posted on our Telegram channel 2 Helix robots being given some groceries and trying to figure out whether or not they go in the refrigerator and a little fruit bowl, or they go in some little side cart. And it's beautifully, I mean, these robots are gorgeous. So what they're doing is if you could tell me this was all one shot and they didn't drop anything and they didn't get anything wrong, which I'm pretty sure they did, then it would be stunning. We'd be very, very close to these robots participating, at least in some super minor tasks. But it always boils down to cost-benefit analysis, right? If your 12-year-old kid putting the ketchup in the refrigerator is a lot cheaper than spending $25,000 for a robot that who knows if it dies in 2 days, that's better for your kid to do it, right? And they need to get off their little lazy ass and make sure they participate with the family. And even if they don't put it in the right shelf or the right container, hey, we're learning lessons here. This is okay. So I think you're going to see a potential backlash against technology, but then the technocrats, which we're going to create an episode on, they're there to force you into these containers, right? To force you into the technology, to force you to be sort of surveyed by the technology. Again, go see my review of the movie THX 1138. This is not a joke. This is a precursor to your life. You may not be doing strontium bar analysis like Robert Duvall was, but you'll be doing something meaningless because a robot could do it for cheaper and better and faster, right? It's simply to keep you busy. It will be interesting to see. There's crazy desires of elite people in the world that they believe, oh gosh, it's going to be wonderful when we take over and we can do whatever we want to the people. They will make themselves extremely bored, as many of the kings and queens have done over thousands of years. It'll be interesting to see how much the people actually put up with it. And the X1 is a little robot that is sort of for designer people. It wears kind of a cloth enclosure so far. I'm sure they're all going to have little Christmas Where's Waldo outfits you can put on them to the degree they won't actually get that hot and burn up. But they're definitely going after a lot of different demographics with what they can do. Now, you'll notice that most of the robots, including the Tesla one, has these sort of black hole movie covers for their faces. It was just little lights in them. That I will tell you from doing interface design classes for almost 35 years. That's a way to pick an interface that is suitable to most of the people. Using the little icons inside the glass to create something cute, something pretty, something soothing, right? There are many projects out there getting funded to try and create human emotions, right? But you have to be careful because, it's like the woman in Ferris Bueller that always said, or no, it wasn't that. It was Office Space, right? It was like corporate accounting. How can I help you? Corporate accounting. You'll just hear that little thing constantly. Someone's trying to be, joyous and crazy constantly through an AI interface, and it'll just be too much after a while. One of the best AIs obviously ever portrayed in film is part of the intro, which is the HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it had grown to an intellectual level of communication. You watch that film and you will get a good sense of probably where a lot of this will end up, depending on your IQ. It would be amazing to go into a house with a low IQ family and it's just, the AI is just, barbaric. And then you go into a person who's educated and it's much more, relaxed and useful and that kind of stuff, right? But it could be that the AIs teach the families to be even smarter. Who knows, right? Now, the one that's out there, I don't know what the name of this thing is, but this douche nozzle calls himself Necromancer, has created essentially a mock of the Westworld ligament robot, right? And for me, this is the most laughable vaporware I've ever seen in AI robotics, okay? The robot is hung from a hook, and it's essentially, it's a muscle-looking body with ligaments and stuff, exactly like the white robot that's constructed inside of the intro to Westworld from HBO. And it doesn't do much. They turn it on and it wiggles its arms and kind of, it looks like some sacrificial lamb from some Satanist, right? It's not able to walk. It's not able to do anything yet. It's just someone using that ancient tech that's been around for, I think, 50, 60 years, where they've got some plastic that if you put electrical charge on it, it contracts, right? And so they've made a whole robot out of this. It's not even a robot. They made this mannequin out of this stuff, this stringy stuff, and then they're just zapping it, right? Now, if they figure it out, hats off, we got Westworld, in terms of the more white robots that were, I think, in season 2. Okay. But everyone's just, I don't know, they're really excited about stuff that doesn't exist yet. And so this stuff gets paraded out there. And that's why so much of this is falling short in where the people are uneducated and the people that are actually doing the work and writing programs and making uses of these industrial robots. They're loving it. They're loving the 3D printing of metal. It's incredible where we are with a lot of this technology. Now, with the last episode, I spent a fair amount of time at the end of the episode trying to give you guys advice on how to get involved with this if you think it's going to eat your lunch. If you think that the AI within your lifetime is going to really take a bite out of what you do, I would defer to that, episode in January last month. If you want that kind of guidance, I would definitely say that there's a tremendous amount of open source code you can download to your computer and play with. If you are a software engineer, you're just a kid in high school or junior high, you can download this stuff and have a lot of fun with what's going on. There are, I should say, there is a decent stream on YouTube of AI that's just AI videos that are letting you know what a tool does, right? And then if you really want to learn AI, but you don't want to go to a four-year university because you're past that point or you can't afford it like most of us, you have udemy.com, udemy.com. I'm a subscriber all year long, so I can just do as much as I want. Just understand that you better be good at math when it comes to AI. This stuff is very math intensive, and so you have to be careful setting your expectations with that stuff. I would be more apt to be a tremendous consumer of AI. And it would be, if you're an older person, you got a little bit of money, it might behoove you to get a goal with AI in a business that you totally understand, part with almost no money, okay? But try to find people that's like, hey, I'm trying to get from point A to point B with AI in this particular category. Man, to the best you can obfuscate and not reveal what you're doing, I would do that. But it's probably, again, when I look back on the software I was developing from the age of like 13 to 16, I know for a fact now, as an adult, my father could have sold that stuff in the back of magazines. I mean, paint applications, synthesizers, like music synthesizers. He could have sold database applications. I had one called FileMaker, and there actually was one that eventually called themselves FileMaker. Mine did the exact same thing their thing did. In the 90s, when the internet exploded, finally, well, what I did with, I'll just give you kind of an idea of what I've done. In the database industry, I wrote a product on the side. It helped unify all the interfaces for thousands of windows, infinite amount of windows, in a big, giant Fortune 1000 development process. So I sold that on the side. I was like 23. Get into this in the 90s, and now it's the internet. I created a website that was eventually the artist known as Prince. It was his chat room from Arista Records. I did it. I put a little symbol on there. I was like one of his fans, and boom, they link right to it. And all of a sudden I got French and all this other different languages up there. In the 21st century, I created my own game company, and we went after everybody and did all the clients that could possibly be done. It was weird. It just ended because that plus the 2008 crash thing. Right now, if you have the calorie energy to put into it and a goal, it's going to be a bit like Bezos getting into this HTTP protocol. Once it falls out of CERN, he figures it out and he pushes and pushes and pushes. The story of his life was that he didn't leave the office for almost 10 years. And he's just in there 7 days a week, grinding, selling books at first, then suddenly it turns into something wild. Now that's trying to go for the gusto example, but if you just need to get your bills paid, you probably need to get out there and start looking around. It almost doesn't matter what you do for a living at this point. I used to think we had a lot of time left for everything. I think there are some definite, if gas cars continue, there'll definitely be a gas repair market. If they start outlawing gas and saying, look, no one's going to be driving anyway, so it's all going to be electric cars, so don't even worry about whether or not your solar panel does anything. Don't worry about the charge stations, all these taxi cab companies that Musk is making and stuff. They're all going to drive in, hot swap the battery, and they're going to pick you up and take you wherever you need to go. That one, I personally, it's just, I think that it would be actually great. But I live in a big city, so it's, for a little tiny town, it doesn't make any sense. And what's a farmer going to do when he has to move stuff around, right? But get into anything and everything that you can conceive of if this concerns you. And you're young enough to have a problem, like you don't have money set aside, your retirement, all that stuff. But anyway, this is your quick update on AI. The reason why I'm making this is that I've just had my mind blown in the last 14 days. Just the way I work. In the last 7 days, the way I work has completely changed with this Cursor product. And what's funny about it is my kid shares a birthday with one of my best friends. His birthday popped up in front of me, and I said, happy birthday, dude. And just to give you the synergy going on, He's working on a product that's the exact same subject matter I'm working on my site. And he goes, well, of course you're using Cursor, right? And I'm like, yeah, but 4 days ago, I wouldn't have said yes. I would have said, what the hell are you talking about? But I woke up, rolled over, got my iPad, pulled up YouTube with one of my favorite channels, just dropped a new video, and I watched him give an example of this thing working, and my jaw was on the ground. This is going to be extremely fast. We all have to protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form. But there are ways to jump on board and ride this, and you're not going to break any promises to God while you're doing it. So anyway, if you haven't been to the website, deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. Everything's up there. The video's up there. The audio's up there. There's a store up there. To the Patreon and PayPal folks, thank you so much and make it happen. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you on the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.